Dr. Nappergold. Our next speaker is Terri Skurzewski, presenting We Published an Anthology During the Pandemic. A lifetime resident of Western New York, Terri is an avid reader, part-time editor, sometime movie background actor, and the moderator of a writer's support group. She is an editor, co-author of 2 books, and one of 11 writers who self-published Dreaming in Ink, a unique anthology, during the COVID-19 pandemic. Terri's favorite exercise is Tai Chi. She has a sweet tooth and treats herself to sponge candy, a buffalo specialty, and turtles, the confectionery, not the reptile. Welcome, Terri.
Good morning, everyone. How are y'all doing? Okay. I have to tell you, I am a writer, I am an indie author, and I'm a moderator of a writers group. However, this is my inaugural presentation, so I ask you to bear with me. I can now add something else to my resume. What is a writing group? It's designed to be a support mechanism for people who love to write but don't know what direction to go, or perhaps don't have people that they can use as peer reviews. They probably are looking for a way to know if they're on the right track, if they are meeting the aims, the intent of their story, etc., etc., etc. So, although my particular writers group is published, I want to talk about how writers groups actually support writers. So the current group name is Dreaming in Ink. The assets that are part of what we do include love of craft, respect, patience, supportiveness, trust, open-mindedness, willingness to share knowledge, willing to learn, and great chemistry. And to me, the most important part of all of these is the great chemistry part, because you can go to a writer's group and not feel that that is a comfortable fit for you. The respect part comes into play because the group is there to offer their thoughts on what a writer is presenting. However, if the writer who is coming to the group is unwilling to accept or hear the suggestions that are being made, that situation won't work. So in my experience in being part of other groups, it's not always the first group you visit that will be the last group you stay with. You have to be willing to hear what other people are telling you. And in my particular case, because of the different styles of writing that I have done over the years, I didn't always have friends or family who would give me honest reviews. Because they were close associates of mine, I felt that they weren't always being honest. It was real easy for them to say, oh yes, that's a great job. But it felt hollow, and I wasn't really sure if I was getting an honest type of review. So a little history on our writers group is that it started out being called Basics to Bylines. This group was started somewhere around 17 years ago. And I don't know the exact date because I wasn't a part of it at that inception. However, 2 women decided that they would each start a writers group, and because of their association with each other, both groups were called Basics to Bylines. The one group met at Barnes & Noble in Niagara Falls Boulevard for years and years, and recently I believe they're either close to starting up again with face-to-face meetings, or they will be in the near future. The other group, which we affectionately called B2B East, was my group. As I said, the group existed a couple of years before my husband and I joined. That being said, where did we meet? We met at the Lancaster Public Library. We were afforded a free room where we had meetings that were open to the community. I found the group by accident in one of the Olafub Writers Report things in the Buffalo News. My husband and I went to one meeting, and I was hooked. And I've been a member of this group for about 15 years. When the county cutbacks affected the hours of the library, we lost our location in Lancaster. The group had already been in existence for several years, and we were unwilling just to give it up, but we needed a place to meet. And so this is where determination comes into play. We relocated to Barnes & Noble in Clarence for a while. Then when Christmas time came along and they decided they needed the space we were assigned for additional retail floor space, we went out to the Perkins restaurant in Amherst until they closed. And so again, we were looking for another place to hold our meetings. We ended up at the Olympic restaurant in Cheektowaga, and that worked for a while. And then what happened? The pandemic hit. And so because our members come from across Erie County, we have people from Williamsville to the north, Clarence, we have people to the south from Sardinia. We were looking for a more central location during a time of the pandemic where we could get together and share our experiences. And so we ended up meeting in a town park, Stiglmeyer Park in Cheektowaga. And I'll go into this a little more, but when the weather turned against us and it was very difficult to hold outdoor meetings, we again looked for another location. And we've recently begun meeting at Afton's restaurant in Elmo. Community rooms in various locations, like at malls or county educational sources, we thought perhaps we could latch on to one of those instead of meeting at a restaurant. But the problem with that is that we are a very small group. We are not registered. We don't hold our own insurance. We don't charge membership fees. So we were not permitted to take advantage of any of the public community rooms in malls or educational facilities. And so that is why we ended up back at Alton's restaurant. As you can tell, I am a novice at presenting. Okay. So we were already in the throes of participating in this idea of doing an anthology. That had started before the onset of COVID. We rebranded from the name Basics to Bylines to Dreaming to Ink because our direction for publication had changed. The initial Basics to Bylines was intended to get people's names out in the community in ways of having been published. Over the years, the members who were with the group and the types of writing that they were performing was leading to longer pieces. It also led to poetry and to song lyrics. Some things were composite of a couple of people writing together. COVID just put everything at a stop. And because we had already been working on this book and were determined to keep our group going, we had to find alternate sources for meeting. Now that meant we had to learn new technology. One member in the group at the time had access to his company's web service. And so we were able to try a couple of meetings, internet meetings, which everybody had to learn how to participate in. You know, simple things like if you're watching the news telecast, you realize that mics are muted. Well, we didn't know anything about that. We didn't know where to find buttons on our keyboards or our iPads. It was a different kind of a learning experience, how not to speak over each other. Anyway, our first attempt, it worked for a couple of meetings, but we weren't too happy with the outcome of it. So we moved on to Zoom meetings. Zoom meetings worked pretty well for us, but we had a disparate amount of time available. We had 15 members in the group, and at this particular time during COVID, we probably had about 13 or 14 who were on and off participating in the meetings. Well, you can imagine having that number of people who perhaps wanted to read or share their work or offer comments about what someone else had read. It was a little confusing. And again, we had to use technology and learn our new skill sets to be comfortable getting our stories out and sharing and still maintaining the intent of working on this book. We are a unique group in that we come from all different backgrounds, different ages, different genders. We write different genres. So the uniqueness is what led to the title of our book. This is a dream come true, dreaming a unique anthology, and it's wonderful to be able to hold it in my hands. The reason that it's unique is that typically anthologies go in one vein, one style of writing. They may be all poetry, or they may be all fiction, or this or that. But because all of our writers write of different genres, and we didn't want to eliminate anyone, we found a way to work together and offer a product that includes all genres. It's not something that you often see, and we knew that it probably would have a way of working against us in some ways. I'm not sure if it did or it didn't. We got the job done, we met our goal. Good chemistry is what got us to publication. Trust in each other was invaluable. Learning to work together. I, as the moderator, did not take control of the book. What we did was set things up so that we identified different areas of publication that we would have to address. My intent was to do this as inexpensively as possible, especially seeing there are no dues. So what we did was we set up these committees and we either asked for volunteers or we tried to recognize the strong points from person to person and slot them into the areas where we felt they could best help with the group. So we had one person who was in a position where her computer had broken down and she would have to go to the library to get her access to her emails and things of that nature. Well, she ended up being our driver, and she would hand out to librarians or public bulletin boards places where we were announcing our group and our upcoming book. We started a marketing committee. We did research on the things that it would take, where we would have to go. We tried to determine if we were truly going to self-publish ourselves or if we were going to go through an indie or local publisher. We investigated and actually had one meeting with a local publisher. After listening to what he had to say, we determined that we could do everything that he was doing, that he was proposing to do for us, with the exception of getting our name out there. But we also felt we weren't going to be 1,000-copy bestsellers. We just wanted everybody to have the opportunity of saying they were published authors. So how does our group work? We bring copies of our work to a meeting. I use what I call a button bag, which is full of numbers, and people draw a number if they plan on reading at that particular meeting. They are allowed 10 minutes reading time and 10 minutes for peer review. When they decide that they're going to come to a meeting and present or read to the group, they're requested to bring enough copies to share with the people who are attending that night's meeting. At the end of the night, the writer who is presenting leaves with all of their copies. But those copies are marked up. In addition to us having a verbal peer review, we also jot down notes on the text that we were provided. And this way, the writer can take it back home, sift through all of these comments that people have been providing them, decide whether or not to accept any of the suggestions that were made, and either they tweak their text or they don't. So that part is as simple as it goes. When it came to the anthology, things were a little different because we knew we were not going to hire anyone to actually edit the book. I decided that that was an area that I could help in. Through my previous work experiences, I had worked on a couple of books for a UB professor in an administrative support way. So I had some idea about the way manuscripts had to be prepared. My husband and I had previously self-published a book, and so I had some familiarity with Amazon and KDP, which is a way that you can self-publish. There are other organizations that provide the same type of service, but I felt most comfortable with the KDP program, and so that's how Bob and I published our first book. So we investigated a couple other opportunities for this publishing, but because of my previous experience, the group agreed that it was fine to go with Amazon KDP. So that all took time, and it all took a whole lot of back and forth. Everybody in the group, although they're writers, they're not necessarily grammatical experts. So there was a lot of editing, and because I promised all of the writers that I would not simply tweak their work without them having an opportunity to review it, there was a lot of back and forth. And I will say there were times that one little essay, or perhaps a very short story, would go back and forth between myself and that particular writer 10, 11, 12 times. So you can multiply that by 11 writers. At this time, we had about 15 active members in the group, but 11 decided to participate. So at our online meetings, we had a limited amount of time for each of the 11 to take their turn at reading, at the suggestions to come back and forth, and for us to do the personal one-on-one reviews for the final editing. Then I had to find a way to take all of these little pieces that sometimes weren't so little, but we agreed that everybody would be offered an opportunity to submit 20 pages. 20 pages times 11 people. And all of that had to be dropped into one manuscript, had to be formatted, which meant I had to now learn a different way of using Microsoft Word, gain a new level of expertise in how to format things, to make chapter headings come up one after the other, how to find out how to get an index to work, just everything, how to do a table of contents. And I will admit that I stumbled on some of these things because the information didn't feel as forthcoming as I thought it would be. I even reached out to the online community using my Facebook account and contact with other writers groups to see if anybody could help. But at this particular time, when we were ready to pull our manuscript together, there was no help that came forward. So I pretty much was on my own. It worked out. We have a publication. I'm very happy with the way it came out. So now we're back to once a month face-to-face meetings at Alton's in Elma. Alton's provides us the space, but because of COVID, we're never guaranteed a spot. So it's like we go in without a reservation these days. It works out. They have a little back room where they used to use it for private parties on the small side for little groups that would come out, and we generally only have to wait 10 or 15 minutes before the space is available to us. As I said before, there are no monthly fees to be a member, but typically we feel we need to support our host, so we arrive earlier, about an hour or 45 minutes earlier than our scheduled meeting, so that we can dine in and support our host that way. Monthly, I'll send out a newsletter type announcement just to remind people of our upcoming meeting. I may share a publication, something that I found online. Through experience, I have previous notes from other writers groups that I participated in, and we just make a go of it that way. Other writers groups, well, first of all, Buffalo is a font of a writing community as far as size. We have all kinds of writers in the area. It's just amazing. If you were able to attend one of the Indie Author Day events of the past, where the tables would be set up on the main floor, you would be amazed to see the volume of people who are already published. It's just wonderful. Wonderful. Murder on Ice, Western/Central New York, is one of the groups that I have seen online, and I read some of their publications. Binkley, Buffalo Niagara Children's Writers and Illustrators. This is a group that I was a previous member of in my days when I thought I could publish children's literature. I still have dreams about that, but it's so very different from what our writers group does. I'm not sure that that particular situation will be happening. The online community has a huge presence in social media. When this group, Basics to Byline, started like 17 years ago, we really weren't using the internet yet. We may have used personal computers to do our drafts, but you didn't have that social media presence. Now all you have to do is Google a couple of words and you'll find things that you can reach out to as a reference, as a source, someone you can network with. You no longer need to be in the same town. You can communicate with someone in California. When Bob and I were doing our book, one of the people who was able to help me with formatting was a gentleman who writes science fiction in California. And he was just starting out, and I was so privileged to have met him. He's now up to like 17 books in a series, which is just amazing to me. But people are willing to help each other. They're willing to spend time with you, to help you network in a different direction perhaps, to give you suggestions, to help you find the path that worked for you. So this is our book. These are our writers. In addition to myself, 2 of our writers are in attendance today. My husband, Bob, and Violet. Raise your hands. We're thrilled to be able to say we're published, maybe self-published, but we're now published authors. In memoriam, our original founder, Edie Conch, recently died. We only found out about it a couple of weeks ago. She will never be forgotten because she is the person who started Basics to Bylines East. She is the person who lived in Lancaster and made the arrangements with the Lancaster Public Library, and she is the one who got us all started. We've become a community of writers. We have developed professional relationships with each other, and we're thrilled to have been able to get our book published. This concludes my presentation. Thank you for your indulgence. I hope you found my presentation interesting. Sincere appreciation to the Buffalo and Erie County Public Library for hosting this event, and especially to Ann Conable and Leah Mosher for the invitation to participate. And if you have questions, I'll be glad to try to answer them.
Hello, Terry.
Hello.
My name is Mark Minnick. I'm a self-published author. My genre is natural realism / contemporary fiction. Okay. I think it's great that you came, quite frankly, because that's one of the things I'd like to know more about. I participated in a writers group, which was the meetup group for Buffalo writers. And I have to say, for anyone who's never been one, I would not have been able to finish my novel without it. So I think it's, I'm very much interested in your group because, quite frankly, I'm writing my prequel to the first novel, and I don't have the support group basically to help along. And so my question essentially is, I see where you meet, but when do you meet? When does it take to join?
Our schedule is the third Thursday of every month. Our meeting starts at 7 p.m.
Okay.
We meet for dinner about 6 p.m. at Alton's Restaurant at Transit and Seneca Street in Alma.
Okay, great. So, okay.
You just have to ask for the writers, because we're never sure where we're going to be.
Right. Yeah, so I'm here to basically reinforce what you're talking about. I would never, with my book, it essentially took 5 years to write and 1 year to edit. And I started writing it before I entered the group. But by getting into the writers group, it changed drastically and became a better novel, primarily because of the input of the fellow writers. So I think it's a great thing. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments.
You know what, I want to mention something. Here at the library, and I'm not trying to steal from your group at all, if somebody wants to establish a writers group, or you need another location, I can guarantee, because it comes out of my office, that we will give you meeting space. We will give it to you on a regular basis. It will be free. And we would do this whether I was standing here or not. I know that you wrote about that Lancaster Library, there were cuts, those were a dozen years ago, but we're open, for example, 7 days a week. We have 3 different meeting rooms here. There are meeting rooms in all of our city branches. Folks, that's what the meeting rooms are for. So if you're looking to establish a writing group or an illustrators group or a publishers group, or you're already in a group, or you're looking, something happens with that restaurant, which could happen, think about the libraries again, and feel free to ask me for my number at some point, or you can call the library and talk to me, but we're available too, because we are your partners at all times. The library is your partner. You can't have food here, you can't order food here, but we've got the space, and that's really for anybody interested. Is there one more question for Terri?
Hi, Terri. I'm Lisa Jacobs Watson. I am also a self-published / published author. I am interested in collaborative work. I would love to get together with other writers who write similar to what I do, or perhaps not. My genre is spirituality. But I'm just wondering how difficult it was to have an agreement with your group to work collaboratively. I'm sure it wasn't easy. And who holds the copyright to your book, and how does all of that work? If you could just expand a little bit on the collaborative effort and maybe even some legalities, or how it all came together that everyone was in agreement to do this as a collaborative effort.
Thanks, Lisa. Well, part of it is that I drew up an agreement based on some other writers' anthology group's agreement. I streamlined it for ours to try to keep it legal. Everybody who is published in our anthology retains their own copyright. So it is not the group's book. It is published by the group, but each writer maintains their own copyright. As far as the collaborations, they sort of happened naturally. No one actually struck out trying to do a collaboration, but from one person reading and someone else saying, I think it would be better if you included this or that, and they just naturally started working together. That happened on some of the songs, and it also happened in some of the poetry. It just happened naturally. So there was no special attempt for it. I will say, as far as having a specific genre, like writing in the spirituality vein, I think I would reach out to the writers community online and do a quick Google search and see if there's a way for you to follow some of these particular individual writers or even reach out to your favorite writers who are already published in that vein. With the internet and social media, you don't have to live in the same community, and that's sort of what makes it so special and so easy to work one-on-one with someone across the country.
Okay? I think we're gonna take a little break. Leah's gonna pick some prize winners.